Hey guys, welcome back to a special episode of Young Americans Abroad, your best place for, well, at the moment, semi-weekly coverage on young American soccer players playing overseas. My name is Austin Van Turen.
And my name is Patrick Ferry.
And welcome to our show. So guys, we're back with a very different special episode today. We're going to outline our 20 Yas, 20 and under. So it's a list that we took some time to compile. Pat, I'm sure we have a good crop of players here, but we'll definitely have some, dissenting opinions, I'm sure. So it'll be interesting to hear what, everyone has to say. But going through our list earlier, we were really excited.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think the future is bright currently, and moving forward during these troubling times with the coronavirus going. I hope all of our viewers here are safe and healthy, and able to tune in and enjoy this episode and our take on some of our players here, because this list is filled with great potential and great prospects.
Yeah, and what else are people going to do? During this break, we've been watching reruns of games from 20 years ago and all that other good stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. I guess we should outline real quick again what the requirements are to be included on this list. So all the players we're going to discuss today are at least 20 years old or under. So keep that in mind. Also, all players on our list, and like our show, Pat, we're Young Americans Abroad. So it's all players that are playing abroad. No players that are currently playing within the U.S. So sorry, Paxton Pomacall, sorry, Mark McKenzie, a host of other players that could probably be included in this prospects list, but unfortunately don't meet that requirement. And then the final requirement is players who are rumored to be going abroad, we have not included in this list. So it is what it is. We'll see, who moves abroad, Pat, over I guess after this coronavirus hiatus, and hopefully we see a lot of names moving abroad. But at the moment, we're just keeping it to players currently contracted by their clubs overseas. And like I said, we got a good amount of players to talk about today. So
yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I think I'm excited to dive into this episode with you, and again, excited to really hear what you viewers think too of our list, and some of the pros and cons, and diving into each player here and analyzing their style, and we'll get more into it and their kind of career progressing throughout the academy to maybe some of the first teams and things like that. So, we got a lot to talk about, Austin.
And with that being said, let's start off with number 20 on our list. And number 20 would be, Pat, Travian Sousa. So Travian is currently a 19-year-old left back playing at Hamburg. And, he spent a lot of time with U19s there at Hamburg, also made a few appearances for their 2 team. And then over the winter break, actually made his debut in the first team. Obviously, it was in a friendly game, but, got some playing time there. And, Pat, just a very solid left back prospect, has good size, good athleticism, has some good technical ability. I know I watched that friendly there in January, and was really, really impressed with what I saw from him. It was a game that was played with all first team players pretty much beside him, and he didn't look out of place. He even stood out a little bit, in my opinion, in that game, and I really liked what I saw from him, and think he has a good future in Germany. It remains to be seen whether or not he'll make the impression there at Hamburg to earn regular first team playing time. Hamburg right now, Pat, is a club that got relegated a few years ago after spending 50 plus years in the Bundesliga. So their team is still fairly strong and fairly deep. And, it's going to take some, play hopefully here in the summer, if he gets a look in, some of these first team friendlies over the summer, he's going to have to really impress to jump up the pecking order. But I like what I've seen, Pat. I think he's a good all-around prospect at the left back position, and someone we should really be excited about.
Right, I couldn't agree more in terms of his potential, and again, just really coming into that left back position strong and or sure of himself and looking very confident in the field, because that's a pretty crucial spot, Austin. All the way up to the senior team. We have some players, kind of breaking through, pushing through, but currently we could use an additional strong left back.
Yeah, for sure. Again, that's one position where we're kind of struggling. We, like you said, Pat, we have Anthony Robinson right now. Hopefully after his heart surgery, we'll be back on the field and impressing again. Chris Gloster, another player who may make an appearance on this list. But more left back prospects we have, the better. And I think Travian is someone that'll take advantage of his time over here in Germany. Just made the move this past summer, so in a short amount of time, he's really kind of stepped into that team there at Hamburg and has really impressed. I think that's a very good sign. I think he should be a player that's called up for the next U-20 cycle. Just because, again, looking at the left backs that we have in that cycle, we have Kobe Hernandez Foster, who's a very good left back prospect. I believe Sam Vines, he might be too old for the cycle. But if he's available, he's another player who's going to be battling for playing time. I think there's one or two other players. I'm starting to fade. It's been a little while since we've had anything to really comment on, Pat, and really deep dive into. But we do have some left back prospects coming up. But I really like what I've seen from Travian so far, and I think that's why we have him as number 20 on this list and included him. So with that being said, Pat, let's go to number 19. And who would that be?
That's right. And that is a center forward here, Sebastian Soto, over with Hanover in the 2 Bundesliga. So again, Soto, just to kind of highlight some of his strengths, I think is just his striker's ability, that knack for finding the ball and even striking, having some great shots. I think he just has that mentality and the ability to get in those tight spaces there inside the 18 and has some really clean finishes. I think what really stood strong too was back in the previous season, where I think he had maybe 17 or more goals with Hanover's U19s there, and also a few, I think it was 3 appearances, with the first team. So he was really high the year before, and you could see even at the U20 World Cup, Austin, just in general, he had 2 braces against the solid France-Nigeria team. That shows that strikers, that poaching ability, that mentality that you have to have in that position. But most recently, you could see a little bit of a concern with the contract dispute, things going on there where he wasn't able to secure a move or anything like that. I know we were talking a little bit off camera. Dortmund was one of the teams potentially linked or allegedly linked, along with Bruges, and I think it was Benfica, the Portuguese powerhouse there. And again, things didn't really come to fruition there for Sebastian. And it seemed like after that, I think he's only had maybe a handful, 1 or 2 or 3 appearances here with the first team, and has not really looked himself. Hasn't really been on the ball necessarily. It's a tough transition for Hanover, I should say, but just really hasn't looked sharp and what you really need to do to prove yourself as a young player in that first team setting. So a little bit of a concern here. Again, still in our top 20 here, and he's at that crucial age, Austin, 19, where this could make or break this next year. Obviously, currently with the uncertainty and the season. But I think Sebastian is a player that, again, is right the right position on this list, I think.
Yeah, and it's a player that really, 1 year ago, like you were saying, Pat, could have been a lot higher up on this list, and was a player that we were very excited about coming away from the U20 World Cup. We saw him score, like you said, those goals in those games against France and Nigeria, and just seemed to have this fervor in that tournament of scoring goals. And this year, in the summer, kind of like you said, Pat, he had that contract dispute. And at the time, a lot of us were kind of thinking, well, he's such a good prospect that, if push comes to shove, maybe getting out of that Hanover situation, which, their team was very bad the season before in the Bundesliga, and that's, why they got relegated, then maybe, pushing his hand and getting out of that Hanover situation was maybe the best decision for him to make. But, quickly that turned kind of sour this year, Pat. He's not gotten playing time. And I think that was, partially at the beginning of the season to spite him a little bit for kind of biting the hand that feeds him. And, that might have been fair, but there was definitely, time to be had. Like you said, Pat, he made a few appearances. And I think, recently we heard from his coach that, they gave him a look in the winter, I think, over that winter break period. And the coach was very disappointed in his work rate and just his attitude essentially at Hanover. So, at that point, you got to be a professional. You got to be a player that, keeps the end point in mind, that, maybe at the, when the summer comes, you're going to be away from Hanover, but to be a true professional, you're going to have to, come to work every day, even if the situation's not what you're looking for. And, that's something that's definitely concerning, Pat. And I'm going to make a little bit of a comparison here too. And,
that's Austin.
we have him on this list for a reason. We definitely think that he has ability. He's got great size, good athletic ability. The thing that kind of concerned me a little bit in looking back, and maybe it was because, at the time when we watched that U-20 World Cup, we were so excited about the goals he scored because they were so important. Scoring against France were 2 huge goals. I know that Nigeria game had a lot of anticipation, a lot of nervousness, because it was a game where we needed to win to make it through the group. And looking back at some of those goals he scored, there was especially that first goal against France, it just seemed like he took really long on the ball to strike it. I know there was another goal, I think one of the goals against Nigeria, he had some good finishes, but it seemed like at times he was a little loose in possession, especially with some of his touches, and just kind of the decision making he had and he demonstrated in some of those games led me to think about another player I was very excited about watching in a U-20 World Cup, and then coming away from it, after we got some perspective a year out from it, is Rubio Rubin. So Rubio Rubin did very, very well in the 2015 U-20 World Cup. Was a player that, again, demonstrated all the athletic ability, had, good size, was very physical, very fast, was a player that was very motivated in that tournament, and was a player, coming away from that tournament, we were very excited about to see what his career would, what he'd make of his career. And, things turned bad for him as well. Obviously, his career was a little bit different with injuries. He had some bad injuries that kind of limited his playing time on the field. And that, when he was on the field, he just didn't really score much. So, I hate to say it, but he kind of reminded me a little bit of Rubio Rubin. The good thing about Sebastian here is that, he's still got time to turn things around. And like I said, Pat, we have him on this list because we think he can turn it around. And, he has ability to, make a career of it in Europe and, show people why he was so highly regarded, not even just, a year ago, less than a year ago over the summer.
Yeah, I think, I agree with your Rubio Rubin comparison. A little scary, but hopefully, like you said, he can really.
That's worst case scenario.
Yeah, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I think his some of his skill sets and his pros can outweigh some of the concerns that we have, and I maybe being a little bit too optimistic here, but I really think if he's in the right situation, the right club, we'll see it. His contract obviously said is up in June. We'll see him on to bigger and better things. Hopefully, I think that's all we can hope for during this truly this rough 19-20 season for him.
Yeah, I guess you could just say now this time away from the game will just wind his contract down a little bit more.
Yeah, so, that's about it.
Yeah. So now moving on to number 18 on our list. Number 18 is another player who has had trouble seeing the field this year, but is definitely a player with good potential, and that would be Jonathan Amon. So Jonathan's still only 20 years old. It seems like he's been around now for good 2 to 3 seasons.
He's only 20.
He's only 20, Pat. And, that's, just a testament of, I guess, the big rise he had at such a young age in his career. And, I think what we came away from, watching his games, when he was playing consistently a year ago when he was healthy, was just how quick he is, how much of a dynamic presence he has on the field, whether that's dribbling at people, just making darting runs in behind the defense. He's just a very electric player. And I think, that's why we're still excited about him, even though he's had his injury troubles over the past season. So just to kind of highlight that a little bit, the last time Jonathan's played, well, I guess he played 2 games this past fall, but besides those 2 games, the last time he played was in May of 2019. So it's been a long time, Pat, for him to be getting consistent playing time and, on the soccer pitch on a regular basis. So, a little disappointing there. But like we said, a very talented player. There's no doubt in my mind when he comes back from injury, he's going to be a player that will get back into the first team plans there at Nordsjælland and, will show his quality again. I think, maybe his potential is not as high anymore, or his upside, I should say, just because, before the break, Pat, they were talking about, or before his injury, his injuries happened.
Right.
They were talking about him moving to Club Brugge as well, several other higher up European teams and higher up European leagues. So, there was interest there, but now, he's just got to get healthy, and then hopefully we can see the best of Jonathan going forward.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a little bit to that, he was a player, like we talked about very frequently on the show in the past seasons, with some of his skill, and you could see some of those bright spots with the U.S., some of the cameos he had. Again, some kind of crucial errors, and he had a pass that was missed. I forget who the forward was, but he curled it with the outside of his foot. But even the possession, I think it was with Sargent, the combination.
Yeah, I think so.
His speed there, you could see to his game, and with Nordsjælland, he does have enormous talent and could be really a useful player for the U.S. moving forward. But like you said, also just really unfortunate. Just want to quickly mention that it's very unfortunate with those injuries, and I don't think we've seen the last of Amon, especially in the news here for young Americans abroad and moving forward. So keep on with that name.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have him on this list for a reason. We think he's a player that's got good potential and will make a European career for himself. And, it's just about getting back healthy and resting up. We all have some time to do that now. So hopefully another player who could, use this rest and, use it to his benefit. So, yeah. I think now we'll move on to player number 17. And who would that be, Pat?
That's right, Austin. And player number 17 is none other than Indiana Vassilev. An exciting prospect, 19 years old, with Aston Villa. It's kind of in that left winger spot, but can kind of go across the field. And I think which is interesting about Indy is he kind of had a pretty good rise. Started obviously back with the IMG Academy and then transferred over to Aston Villa there with the youth teams. And is now kind of, within really killed it, Austin, in the U-23. Really performing there and moving up now, some appearances here and there with the first team and on the bench a lot. So his playing style, it's interesting, just in terms of his work rate. And again, maybe not the right comparison, and this is specifically to his work rate and kind of how he injects energies into teams. But I would say that Indy kind of reminds me of Lyndon Gooch maybe a few years back, and in terms of just his athleticism, dynamism that he adds when he comes on as a substitute late. And I think it was the EFL Cup. I could be mistaken there, or the FA Cup, where he appeared along with some Premier League matches. And it's just kind of great to see another player breaking in to the Premier League. Although you could say too, and we'll touch on it, I know Austin a little bit more, you were talking off camera that there's some kind of injuries that are taking place there, and he's kind of just not to use maybe not the right terminology, but that next up in line, and just kind of there maybe to potentially fill some voids. But, I think he's shown really good qualities and a player that we kind of have to watch, moving forward. I think he certainly deserves to be on this list. And again, I think some of his other good assets he has is he seems like a very, a strong player for his age, really good build in terms of being able to compete physically with some of the Premier League players, and why he's risen so quickly.
Yeah, and the other thing we've heard about him too is just his mentality. He has a very strong mentality, and that's kind of led him to taking that opportunity of getting, training time with the first team and really making that or turning that into first team appearances. So, the injuries definitely played a role in him getting playing time. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But, in this playing time, he looked okay. He didn't do anything great, but I do think there is some merit to the playing time he got. And, he's gained a lot of fans in that Aston Villa team. A lot of their fans were hyping him up on Twitter and really excited about him. So, it's good to see a player of that age, an American, make their debut in the Premier League and have that support from the club. So, going from here, Pat, I don't know if he's going to have a first team future with Aston Villa next year, but I think he's set himself up well to, maybe get a loan to a good championship team or club and get himself into a good position. And, it's kind of up to him now to make his, future his own. And like you said, he's got good quality. So there's definitely no doubt that he can do that if he goes to a championship club on loan or something like that.
Yeah. Again, just some last minute thoughts too on Indy. Agree with definitely a lot of your points. And I think originally before the season kind of was abruptly ended, I would have almost said maybe as it continued, Indy could really get a shot with the first team even more. Maybe that's a little bold stating that, but with it kind of shut off now, or the season postponed, I think, like you said, with the loan move, things like that, I don't think right away he could be a huge impact player or starter for Aston Villa. Again, whether that's moving on to a solid championship club down the road, we'll kind of see as his potential grows. Still very young, but I think he could still develop really well, in the second tier or somewhere else in Europe. But certainly a player that has the grit, the tangibles, and like you said, Austin, just kind of that personality or that leadership, that fight you need to succeed in cutthroat leagues across Europe. So a great player to watch out for. Yeah,
and Aston Villa could get relegated too, depending on the outcome of the season.
Whatever happens.
Maybe that team is Aston Villa. So,
and it is really a good Lynn and Gooch comparison.
Right. We just don't want him playing in League One.
Right.
Seeing him on Netflix or something like that. So, but So now moving on to player number 16 on our list, and we have Christian Cappis. So Christian is, another player who's kind of, taken his career by the reins and really made, it his own. And, Christian moved over to Hobro, I believe about a season ago now. I think it was in the winter of 2019. So, he's been at Hobro now for a period of time. And, this season has really established himself as a regular starter for that Hobro team. And, he's played in 1,600 minutes this year, scored a goal, had 3 assists, and is really just a good technical all-around midfielder. He's not going to wow you with any one part of his game, but he's got so much to his game that he's, very good or very solid at. He's a good passer of the ball. He's good in tight spaces. He's pretty strong for his size and his age. Not super quick, but definitely athletic. So, he's just a player who, is just all around very solid, Pat, and is a player that, is 20 years old now. So, we'll see what the future holds for him. Emmanuel Sabi, who's also on Hobro at the moment, is moving to another Danish club. Might not be Hobro's anymore, Pat. We'll see.
They're breaking up.
Hopefully they'll get a few more appearances together. But so Emmanuel Sabi moved on to another Danish club. I think this could be the same path that Christian goes for. I don't think he's shown well enough at Hobro at the moment to make a move to a Bundesliga club or something like that. But I definitely do think there would be interest from a two Bundesliga club if he chose that route. And I liked what I've seen so far, Pat. He was a player that was in contention for the U20s, just missed out, but has been a player that's really kind of stepped up for the U23s, and even got called up to the January camp, I believe, as well.
That's right, yeah.
And was a player that, Greg Berhalter has definitely had his eye on a little bit. So, I just like what I've seen. I think he's another player who's going to have, if he chooses to, I'm sure there'll be offers to go back to MLS here at some point too. But if he chooses to, I think he could definitely have, a good, solid European career and play, maybe not in the highest of leagues, maybe not like a top 5 league, but I think he could definitely, make a claim in another league, maybe like the Eredivisie or something like that, and make a good career for himself abroad. So, what do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important to note too is what you really emphasize and highlight on, just his overall skill set. And it's not necessarily saying, he's not, he's good in everything, but not great. So he's not that, that good overall. I think it's, in terms of, you have to look at it, just everything he can bring to the game is almost like that, the jack of all trades. He can do so many different things and fill in so many different areas. And, he's always been a player, even throughout the setup, like you were mentioning with the U.S. youth teams moving up, he's always been in contention there, or playing, or playing some crucial roles, or whether it's invited to camps and being on the fringes there. He's been on the radar this whole time. So I think that's really crucial to note in terms of obviously getting a move over abroad here and with Hobro, as well as just with the national team, and moving up the ladder there with the U.S. system here. So. I think that just speaks testaments and volumes to his game here, and I hope it continues to develop.
Yeah, that's a great point too. It seems like he's a player that kind of arises to the challenges that he's tasked with. That's exciting. And I don't think I have anything else to add, Pat. Let's say we move on to number 15.
That's right, Austin. And number 15 is pretty exciting. We've had some
our boy.
Goals, and that's right, our boy Charlie Kelman with Southend United. The 18-year-old center forward has really made a great impact this season, which is awful just to see the season end so abruptly. But with his appearances here, Austin, especially kind of after those first few months of the season. Wasn't getting too much playing time, but then really killed it and crushed it at the end here with 18 appearances, 12 starts. And I think he picked up over 7 goals or so with over 1,000 minutes on the season. So not too bad. It is League One, and Southend was struggling at relegation, but he was kind of that almost, you could say, that shining star, that light at the end of the tunnel for Southend as a club. And you can see the reaction on Twitter with some of the fans and even the media there covering Southend. So it's really great to see him, just because he's another player that just has a knack for finding the net with such a high work rate. And what really impressed me, Austin, was just his physical abilities and traits, being a really young striker. And even all the tiers, you could say, in this third tier in England, it's maybe not the most technically sound, but the physicality is a whole nother level. And day in and day out, that's a grind. There's a lot of games to be played, and moving up the ladder there, promotion, relegation throughout those tiers is wear and tear on the body. And I think just from some of the highlights, he can fend off defenders, elude them, and just hold them off and make some confident, composed finishes in the back of the net. So I think, again, that I want to highlight that wonder goal he had from half field, which is unreal. Certainly is the icing on the cake. But Austin, I want to get your opinions too. But I think a great move for him, and to him to climb on this list and even get more recognition with the U.S. here, is maybe a potential move in the summer. Again, a lot of things going on right now, but I think he could really make a move and a mark at a championship level club and take that Dwayne Holmes path.
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to have to because Southend are in that relegation zone, like you said. So if he doesn't want to be playing in League Two, which I think he's definitely a higher prospect than a League Two starter, I think he's going to have to make the jump to like you said, Pat, a championship club at the very least. So yeah, I think I agree with everything you said about him. He's a big player who's really started to fill out body wise, and maybe not the most technical with the ball. Seems to be more of a brutish forward at the moment, more of a poacher, so to speak, than someone who's going to take the ball on the dribble and create for other players. But it's always good to see that from strikers at a young age, and definitely. Again, with Charlie, what we like about him so much is just his mentality from what we've seen. He seems to be a player who's not afraid to try things like that half-field volley or shot from half-field. That's
not many people are doing that unless you're playing FIFA.
Yeah, it takes some balls to do that. So I think all those things combined, give him a very bright future and should be a player that that does have some work to do, but I think the sky's the limit for him. He's shown that so far. So do you have anything to add about Charlie, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head with all the points here. Overall a really great, promising striker. That's why we kind of, I'm curious what all you viewers, your thoughts are in terms of where he is on the list. I know you could maybe make some cases. We were talking off camera too on a few positions maybe that, positions on this list that maybe
it gets tough coming up here.
It gets tough. It's very tough. Surprised that he jumped areas, but I think just overall in terms of how he's developed and where he's at currently, playing consistent minutes for a first for the first team here, and with his potential, I think all culminates into great things and where he ended up on the list here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Pat. So now let's move on to number 14. Number 14 is a player we're very excited about, and that would be Konrad de la Fuente. So Konrad is a player who, has had some, maybe, I wouldn't say he's underperformed this fall, but there's definitely been some, we thought he was going to be a player that was going to play with Barca B this year predominantly, and that wasn't really the case in the fall. He played mainly with Juvenal over at Barcelona. So, with the caveat that it is Barcelona and, they have a lot of good players in their academy. So coming away from the fall, we were a little, I guess, disappointed with where we thought Konrad was at. But then, he got some playing time here in the spring, and there was, some contract disputes or rumors that potentially he was looking at a move to Hertha Berlin. That never materialized, which was, definitely for the best. Jurgen Klinsmann was there at Hertha for a period of time.
That a disaster.
That ended very poorly. So it's probably for the best Konrad's not going there. But so he got some minutes there at Barca B and actually scored his very first goal for Barca B. So, I think what we really need to realize, and when we were looking back at this list and creating this list, is that Konrad's still very young. He's just turning he's still 18 at the moment. So he turns, I believe, 19 in July. So you got to, think next year he should, full-time be a Barca B player. Because I believe that Juvenal team is a U19 team. So I don't think he would, right. I guess he might qualify for it, but it seems like he's going to be moved up to Barca B full-time next year. And I think that's something that we got to, really, put in perspective. He's going to be playing, that Barca B team is made up of mostly 21, 22, 23-year-olds. And he's going to be a 19-year-old playing that level of play for a full season. So, I think so far he's made good progress at Barca. He's a very technically skilled player. The one knock on him is he's not super quick. Maybe he's quick, but he's not fast, if that makes sense. He's got quick feet, but he's not necessarily the most fast winger and, rapid paced winger. But definitely has great technique, good with both feet. As a player that showed that at the U20 World Cup. I liked his play there at the U20 World Cup more than some people. I thought he showed some good, quality on the ball. Maybe wasn't as explosive at times as he needed to be, but I definitely thought he was an asset on the wing in terms of just being a player that we could, throw the ball up to and be confident that he was going to, control the ball and really take, players on and put, players in dangerous situations. So, I think the one caveat, Pat, with his situation and why we don't have him maybe higher up on the list, because I think he's a very technically sound player, is the fact that he's playing at Barcelona. This is a club that's very hard to break into. It seems like, he's definitely a player that they like. They, it sounds like they extended a contract to him for, the next few seasons, but at some point it seems like he's going to have to make that move. And, it's just so tough to, really chart that path and see, how his future is going to unfold. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of decisions he's going to have to make, whether or not, what move, if he does end up making a move. Hopefully he breaks into the first team at Barca, but it's very unlikely. So I think with that, that potential, move, it could, it's going to be a career defining move. And it makes things difficult in projecting, I guess, where Konrad's going to be in a few years.
Yeah, I think he's at a huge, an interesting point in his career, almost you could say a crossroads. Obviously, he did sign that contract, but just in terms of where he's at and his age and development, and again, like you highlighted there and harped on, Barcelona is obviously one of the most famous clubs in the world, and breaking in is not easy at all. But I think, like you mentioned too, what really could carry or make or break him is, as he moves up here and he's playing with older players, to not lose sight of his confidence and his ability to at least take people one-on-one.
Yes.
Maybe he'll, have some problems with some of the older guys, more experienced players, whether he's training with the first team or with his teammates there at Barca B, wherever he kind of ends up here. But just not to lose, confidence or sight of that, of his strengths, and really, utilize those as he moves up, because he is a very, like you said, Austin, he's not super fast. He's not going to, burn you on the outside like Sergino Dest moving forward or anything, but he has those quick feet and some of that flair, that Barcelona flair and style that could be, really crucial to the even the senior team with the US here moving forward. We don't have a lot of that creativity. More of kind of, not to say we've been playing kickball in the past, but we could certainly use some of that creativity. So I think this is a very, very important part of his career, and someone that, we should all really stay tuned to and, hope for great things.
I was going to say, hey, Jordan Morris has some creativity. Don't knock the guy too much.
I know. Sorry, a little too hard.
No, I understand. But I think he's a player that has a European future. It's just going to be tough to really, he's going to definitely have to, prove it here. I think he's still in a good spot. The start of the season was a little rough, I guess you would say. But when you really put it in perspective and realize how young he still is, he's still got time until he's really at that crossroads, like you said, Pat. So with that being said, I think we're still really high on him. I think he's a player that like I said, has a European future. It's just, he's going to have to make a tough decision here, and things are going to have to, I guess, materialize the right way, like all our prospects, I guess.
Yeah.
But now let's go to number 13, Pat. Who would that be?
That's right. 13 here is Alex Mendez over at Ajax. So the 19-year-old center mid. He's had kind of a mixed, last year or two, you could say. And just to kind of back up what I mean here. Currently in this 1920 season, he's had 22 appearances. He's been up to young Ajax, 2 goals and 2 assists. They're playing the second tier there in the Netherlands. And previously, obviously, he rose pretty rapidly, with the U19s, and even, prior with winning that the young player. And Austin, if you can help me out on, I don't remember exactly the title of that award, but I think
it was like young. It might have just been Young Men's Player of the Year or something like that.
Youth or Young Men's Player of the Year. Yeah, so I mean, he had, and to back up why he got that award was his. We're harping all the time here, but that amazing left foot, Austin. Just
Yes.
that it can just a cracker of a shot or a bending of the ball in terms of his free kick ability, corners shooting. His left foot is unreal. Like that is just something that he has that natural talent for and he's worked on. Don't get me wrong, but that is just something that a lot of players can't do, which is a huge draw and appeal, and why he's been really highly rated and scouted by multiple other giant clubs throughout his youth career here. And yeah, I think it's interesting too in terms of this season for Mendez, and I think where he needs to make that jump and transition to really tough to break Ajax first team, you could say. But just in terms of sometimes when he's in the game and in the rhythm of the game, he's a really good player, but he can find himself disappearing or fading out. And I think in some of the cases, Mendez hasn't been played in the exact correct positions. He's kind of adapted. I don't know the exact percentage to that, but I think I was reading a little bit on that. And he's kind of found himself a little bit lost in terms of maybe positionally where he needs to be and how he can influence the game, because when he's a player with the ball at his feet, he can make magic happen. And he just kind of needs to, get accustomed to that moving forward and to be able to make that big step to the first team, Austin.
Yeah, and I think, again, like you alluded to, that left foot is just so good that it's hard to really discount him. He hasn't had the rise, or I guess even the success in Europe as we were hoping he'd have, making that move to Freiburg, I guess a season and a half ago, right. 2 seasons ago. So, that's been somewhat disappointing. And this was a player that, probably when he made the move abroad, he was one of the top rated players on our list. But, we still have him high up on our list because we think, he still has those qualities that are really hard to possess. And he's very good at passing the ball, especially some of his long passes are really impressive. But like you said, Pat, it's going to be tough to break into that Ajax first team. And, again, he's a player that might have to go on loan to show people what he can do in a first team environment. And it's just, we're still excited about him, but he still has some work to do to really, prove himself and reach that potential that we know he has.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Just reaching that potential, and for some players it might take a little bit longer. Some might be rapidly or instant, like we're seeing, and we'll go on further down the list. But again, this is a player that maybe is kind of taking a back seat a little bit for now, but who knows what the future holds and how he progresses. And again, just such a young talent, and maybe he needs to build a little bit more in terms of physicality and things like that I didn't mention earlier. But yeah, I think he's got all the tools and tangibles, like we mentioned, with that left foot to be a huge success, Austin, moving forward.
Yeah, left foot is great. So hopefully we see some long range goals here in the long-term future. We hopefully see him for years to come.
Yeah.
But now let's go to our number 12 player on the list. We're already up to 12. So Pat, that would be Owen Otasowie. So one of the younger players on our list as well, but Owen is an 18-year-old American English center back, CDM. He played at CDM, the one appearance he had in the Europa League, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But just to go through the timeline for Owen, early in 2019, he dealt with some injuries that kept him out of, some of the, I guess it was U17 or U18 games for the US, and also, some of his games at Wolves. And, going into the summer and into the fall, really, he played mostly with the Premier League 2 team there at Wolves, which is, I guess, kind of the U21 or U23 team in England. So, he's playing kind of up in age level. And then, in December, he made the bench for the Europa League, ended up getting in a game against Braga, when Wolves were already, I believe, through in the Europa League. So, the game wasn't really super important for them, but it was still a good experience for them to get, him some playing time, and they ended up getting him some playing time. And then shortly after that, he actually made the bench for a few Premier League games. And it's also important to caveat, too, there was some injuries during this period at Wolves that kind of, I guess you would say, propelled him up the depth chart a little bit. And there was also some rumors that they were trying to give him, woo him into signing a new contract, because there was some interest from some bigger clubs, Pat, like PSG. I think Real Madrid was even rumored to be looking at him for a period of time. But yeah, so he never made his Premier League debut, but he made the bench multiple times. And then he did sign a new contract in January until 2022. So he'll be at Wolverhampton Wanderers until 2022. So it's been a quick rise, Pat. Owen's a very big, athletic player who's also got good technique. We saw some game footage from his appearance against Braga, and looked very composed on the ball, looked very smooth. I would say that was the word I came away saying about him and his game from that game. And, even some of the other highlights we've seen of him in the Premier League too, he's a very smooth player on the ball. So, it's exciting, Pat. He's got that size that you look for in a center back, and, he's got technical ability as well. So definitely a high profile prospect that should have a good future here.
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback off of what you said, just in terms of being a smooth player. I think that's really crucial as a center back, because especially him being so young and really on the rise here. A lot of the concerns that we've had when unfortunately John Brooks has been injured, seems like every window, but a lot of the concerns involve just being kind of panicky, kicking the ball forward. What other words I can use to describe the opposite, the antonym of smooth? And this is certainly a player that Owens is certainly a player with his size, his skill, that could add such a huge. Again, depends how everything turns out for him, but could really help our national team, I should say. I think that'd be a really great player to have, and that's why we have him so high on the list here at number 12.
Yeah, and the big thing with Owen too is he's got that decision to make whether he wants to represent England or the US. I think it's safe to say that if he represents the US, he'll be a crucial part of this U-20 cycle. I think at the moment he should definitely be the first center back on the depth chart. He's just that good of a prospect, and again, it comes down to that decision. I think, again, you said Patty's very young, but also has really established himself at this young age. And, it remains to be seen whether he'll get more playing time, maybe end of the season if their season continues, or, next season with Wolves. But, I think he's a player that Wolves will definitely prioritize getting minutes somewhere for, whether that's on loan, play time in some cup games, maybe in the Europa League again if they get a favorable draw. I do think he's got a future at Wolves, and that's exciting to see one of our players, obviously making. Well, I guess he never did make his debut in the Premier League, but impressing enough to get in the first team plans for a Premier League team, and a team playing in Europe even too. Yeah,
and I was about to say too, like Wolves is doing really well. I think they shocked me. I wouldn't have had them, have such a successful run, in the Premier League and back recently. I think that's a really great club and situation that Owens is at right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so I guess we kind of want to move over to number 11, Austin. I'm excited about this striker, or forward, I should say. This is Nico Gioacchini. Nicholas is playing for Caen. He's 19, a center forward, and he has really had an electrifying season, you could say, with the first team here in 1920. Another player with a rapid rise. I think just in May 2018, he signed, and he was just last season with the reserves, the U19s too, and he was scoring goals there with ease. And eventually, brought up to the first team.
We were covering it.
Yeah, we were covering it, Austin. In September 2019, Austin, he had that debut and his goal. So really exciting combination to have, and continued that forward. I think right here I had noted 17 appearances right now in the league, and 15 of those were starts. So he's really trusted there at Con, which is a great situation I think to be in, and someone that I think excuse me, you mentioned too some of the areas of improvement, but I guess I want to talk about some of the strengths too here, in terms of another player that seems to be able to, he's adapting to hold-up play and a different kind of style where he can kind of track back and also make really good combination passes with some of his midfielders and other forwards there, along with his cool, calm, and composed finishes. So I think he has some areas to improve on, but those are certainly strengths that Khan sees, and I really hope that develops moving forward.
Yeah, he's definitely a player. And it's weird to say this because I feel like he's maybe less of a finished product, or maybe even just less of a, I don't know, I guess finished product as some of the players we've already mentioned. Like, I feel like Konrad de la Fuente is a better technical player than him. Maybe you could make the case for even like Alex Mendez being more technical than him. But I do love how Nick Gioacchini has really seized his opportunity at Con. And Con's, a team that has spent a lot of time in Ligue 1 and are, just a team that'll definitely have eyes on them. So I think he's in a better situation than some of the players we've already talked about on our list. But what I really like about Nick, kind of like you were saying, Pat, is just he's got good size. He's really got what it sounds like good mentality. He's really fit in to that French culture. I know I follow him on Instagram, and I think you do as well, Pat. And we've seen a player who's very outgoing, a player who's very connected to life there in France. And I think when you see a player get so connected to the club they're playing at in such a quick time, I think it speaks to just, what they think they're capable of. And I think, he's a player that's going to just push himself to get better and better, and take more advantage of the opportunities he's been given and will be given going forward. So I think for those reasons, that's what makes me most excited about him. I know he's not a super finished player at the moment, and he's got some things to work on, but I just like the position he's in with his club. And I think, he could get more playing time next year, and then hopefully, kind of launch that playing time into an opportunity, hopefully for a Ligue 1 team. That would be, ideal.
Yeah, I think that's it, Austin. I think that's the next step. Ligue 1, if he can continue to develop and really make an impact there, that's
and get more clinical too.
That's exactly. Yeah, I think those are the key points too, in terms of just developing, in terms of like you just mentioned there. But if he can make that jump, and I think he really can, I think we'll see it. He'll develop clinically and just improving overall as he's progressed with, again, who knows in the few months that the season kind of went on here that he could have, addressed some of those areas of weaknesses. But at least, now he has some time to, think about things, and really once training resumes there and team activities resume, be able to work on those improvements, because he's a great player and a great striker, I think, for the future here, Austin. So I don't know about you, but I think I'm kind of excited to drop into our top 10 here.
Yeah, we're going straight to number 10 right now, and that would be a surprising player, Pat. This is one of the I'd definitely say one of the biggest surprises on our list. We might have one or two more, but that would be Cameron Harper. So Cameron Harper is a winger / striker playing at Celtic right now at the moment for their reserve team. And Cameron made the move. I believe it was either last year in the winter, maybe in the fall of the season before, but has really taken to life in Scotland. Was a player from California.
Different areas, Austin.
Yeah, very different areas. But, I think he's Scottish and has some Scottish heritage. So, he kind of made that move to Celtic as a homage to them, and wanted to, I guess, reconnect with that side of things. But what we like from Cameron is just his explosiveness. I would say he's a very technical player, in the sense of he likes to do a lot of dribble moves. He likes to take players on. He's not afraid to shy away from taking players on the dribble, and I think it's great. I liken some of his gameplay to Uly Llanez from watching, some of his highlights of his games. He's just a player that really likes to take players on, and has scored a good amount of goals too for the reserves there at Celtic. And Pat, the reserves at Celtics are no slouches. There's one of the best prospects in the world playing in the Celtics reserves opposite Cameron on the wing, and that would be Karamoko Dembele, who's been tracked for probably the past 2 to 3 years now.
Yeah, we've known him since what? He's like 13, 14.
Yeah, one of the shortest players on the field you'll ever find, but he's definitely one of the biggest prospects in the world just because of his quality on the ball. So I think it's cool to see him starting pretty much every game for the reserves opposite Karamoko on the wing, and I just love what I've seen from him. That being said, Celtics a very tough team, Pat, to break into. They got a lot of players. It's a very deep team, and it's a team that dominates the Scottish Premiership. So, they're not going to necessarily give those reserve players, dibs on minutes. But I do think, Cameron's shown enough in his time with the reserves that, he's a player that Celtic, I think, value and will find playing time for him. Again, whether that's on loan or whether that's actually giving him legitimate playing time with them. I think he'll show that, he's a player that they need to give time to somewhere, and, just take time to develop him, if that makes sense. So, what do you think, Pat?
No, I think that's really important. Just taking time, because Celtic has a lot of established players and some solid, even some stars that have maybe fallen out in some other top leagues come and revive themselves. And it's a pretty tough team to break into in terms of the youth setup. And I think they've had the captain forever, and there's a lot of tradition with Celtic, and whether that's on loan or he can kind of integrate to the first team plans. Excuse me. I think it's going to take a lot of will on his end, and I believe he can certainly do that. But yeah, Celtic is not it's not the most difficult league, but it's a very historic club with a lot of kind of tradition set in stone there. Yeah,
that's very true, and it's definitely worth mentioning as well, Pat, that Cameron was called up to the U-20 team just this past January, and was actually one of, I believe, 2 players who got called up to the first team for the men's national team by Greg Berhalter. And I think that bodes well for him. I think we've seen so far that Greg Berhalter has been I think he's been pretty accurate with the talent he's identified. Obviously there's some talent that obviously we're not happy about seeing. The who is it? I can't even think of his name now at the moment. But the one left back from Montreal. I can't believe I'm forgetting it. But
I'll not be mentioned.
Yeah, right. But I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's shown the quality that he has. That a first team coach and the coach of the men's national team is giving him an opportunity to take on full professionals. So we'll see what the future holds. I do, like I said, I really just like Cameron's game. I think he's got good potential. I think he's someone that will, make a career for it in Europe and a career for himself, and really take advantage of this opportunity. He should be a U-20 regular for this U-20 cycle coming up here. And, I think that could be a really, really good launching pad for him to, buoy that into first team minutes. And I'm excited to see, what the future holds for him. So, yeah. Do you have anything to add on him, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, not too much. I think I couldn't agree more with everything you said. So, if you don't mind, Austin, we're going to move over to number 9 here.
That works.
That is, Chris Durkin over in Belgium with Sint-Truiden. So, he is a 20-year-old defensive midfielder who, had some struggling times earlier over in with MLS and DC United. So, really wasn't breaking in to that first team lineup. You could see kind of his potential throughout the youth setups and with the youth national teams. Even decent run at the U20s World Cup there. But yeah, I think this loan move ultimately to Sint-Truiden, we were a little skeptical at first. At least maybe I shouldn't speak for both of us, but I was. I don't know about you, Austin.
Oh yeah, I was. Like I said, I think I said this to you off camera. I felt like this loan move was either going to make him or break him. I felt like he could go on loan to Belgium and not play a single minute, and then go back to DC United and be a career MLS player. Or he could go to Belgium and done like he's done, break into the first team there, and kind of reestablished himself as a prospect that we should be paying attention to. So yeah,
right. Yeah. I mean, I think great points there because where Durkin is, at 20 in his career, it really was a make or break. And again, I'm not necessarily saying 100%. It's a make here, but he's had a really, really successful career. Just took him, or I'm sorry, successful year that in turn kind of revived his career. But I think initially for loan moves and going over to Europe, it can be really difficult, especially for a player who had some tough times in MLS. And he really, it really sounds like he put his head down, got to work, integrated with the team well. And, not too long after that, a few months in, he began getting some starts. I think he has a goal as well.
Got it on his birthday.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Austin. Thanks for remembering that. But so like, it's just nice to see him really progress in Belgium. And, I think this loan move is fantastic, and maybe speaking too soon or wishful thinking, but it would be almost even, it would be great if Sint-Truiden either were to purchase him or maybe continue the loan for another year. I think that's a really good place for him. I don't think, he should really push for an Anderlecht or things like that, but also I think he could really make a name for himself in Belgium, and he seems like he's really adapted to the league.
Yeah, and I believe Sint-Truiden have like a transfer stipulation. I don't know what I'm looking for. An option to buy, I guess, is the way I'm looking to phrase it for him. So hopefully after this loan move, they exercise it, because like you said, Pat, he's really taken to life in Belgium, and he seems really integrated with the culture there. Which I think after he had a really bad end to the U-20 World Cup in that Ecuador game, his best performance, and I think that was really. It was the first time in his career where I really felt like he was getting scrutinized, because he's always been a player that we've been excited about. Had great size as a young player coming up, and it was the first time he was really, I guess, challenged and was forced to really put his head down and prove people wrong. And I think he's really made himself at home in Belgium, and I think he's shown to himself that he can play in Europe. And I think if he stays in Europe, it could just keep getting better and better. So hopefully we see more from him. Yeah,
I mean, that's really all I could say, Austin, because the reason being in the top 10, excuse me, he's he's had those qualities. He's been really named, and just being scrutinized. That generally means that a lot of buzz is around you. People are talking about you in the soccer world and the Twitter sphere. But it's nice to see him really kind of putting things together, and I'd love to see him build upon the success moving forward next season.
Yeah, very true. And I think with that, we'll go down to number 8. So it's getting tight here. But number 8, we have Chris Gloster. So Chris, made the move to PSV this summer from Hanover. Was one of the players who was able to get out of Hanover, and was a starter for them for a good period in the fall, but then got injured and was out for a good period of time. But when he came back here in the spring, he was inserted pretty much right back into that starting lineup for young PSV. So young PSV have had their troubles this season. They haven't been performing as well as they really should be, but I think Chris has played pretty admirably for them. From some of the highlights we've seen, we haven't really been able to see much of like full games from for them, but from what we've seen, he's looked his normal self. Chris is a player who is pretty quick, is good getting forward, has good touch on the ball, is again another player who's very smart too. he's again a very, very talented kind of all around left back. Can get back and defend, and I think he's a player that I think we've seen enough of him so far to say that he will be a first team player in Europe at some point. It's just he's got to continue to keep honing his game. He has all those qualities. He's just got to get more consistent in his playing time and what he's able to do. But again, it might not be at PSV. At the moment, PSV have maybe not a stacked left back position, but they definitely have two, older, more experienced players ahead of them. And Ricardo Rodriguez, who played very well at Wolfsburg a few seasons ago, and then at AC Milan kind of lost his groove a little bit.
Downwards.
Yeah, it was weird to see him make the move on loan to PSV, but he's on loan till the end of the season. And then Olivier Boscagli, a player who used to be at Nice, who was at one point a very highly touted left back. But again, another player who's kind of fallen on some hard times and lost some of his mojo. So, we'll see what the summer holds for Chris. I think he's a player that will need to take advantage of his next opportunity with PSV to really cement himself in their first team plans. But I do think he will get an opportunity here coming up. So I think for that reason, I'm really excited about him. I think he's in a good spot. I think it was very good to get out of Hanover because there was just a weird vibe there. And I don't know, he got some playing time this past summer, but didn't look the best and didn't play like we're used to seeing him play. Looked a little timid in his time, was getting exposed over the summer. So to get out of that situation, Pat, and be in a situation at PSV where they're not having the best season, and one of their left backs is going to be, moving away from his loan, or his loan's going to expire here in the summer. I think that may open him up to have some opportunity with them to get into the first team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is to consistency for him because, at this point in his career too, he's really developed. We've seen some great things from Gloster, and then we've also had some of the highlights on our show where maybe a young PSV has given up 3 or 4 goals, and unfortunately him in the back line, not blaming it solely on anybody, but have been part of those. So just some minor things to improve on, maybe some certain moments, picking, choosing when to attack and defend there. He has, I feel like he does have some really good qualities defending, but just to again, it's all about that kind of transition. We have a lot of players kind of floating along the young PSV, young Ajax, or those second tiers right on the fringe there. So just kind of almost tweaking, making little adjustments there. I think the Gloster is such a highly touted and prized prospect, and I think we're obviously really lucky to have him in the pool. And again, wanted to not harp too much on that Hanover situation, but you can see what's happening right now with another that Soto that we just talked about earlier. So it's nice to see him get out of there, and it just seems like things are aligning for his career path there.
Yeah, that's true. I do think they are aligning for him. So yeah, I'm excited about him. I think, we expected him maybe to rise a little quicker this year, but I do think the injury has slowed him down a little bit. And I think he's still on the right path. And I just value what I've seen from him so far. I think he's a player that will make it right. I think he's a player that we can confidently predict be a player that's in the USMNT plans in the future, whether that's consistently or, every once in a while he'll get called up if he's playing well. So yeah, let's get down to the nitty gritty now. This is where it gets tough.
That's right.
It was tough.
This is certainly tough, and it hurts my heart a little bit in terms of the injuries for this player, also at number 7. But that is Tim Weah, our boy Timmy Weah, with Lille here, 20-year-old center forward. And unfortunately, just to highlight the timeline of the injuries, it was August 2019, and he was really ready to. He's got a few appearances with Lille. The team's, was a very solid team there in Ligue 1 and doing well, and it just seems like a great move from PSG, and all his success on loan with Celtic there. And unfortunately, I think it was that I think I have here the torn hamstring And that's such an awful injury to any athlete there. And, that really set him back quite a few months. And I think, again, in February, he featured, and I think it was only for 8 to 10 minutes and substitute appearance. And right back again now, he, re-injured that torn hamstring. Again, I don't know the specific technical terms, not that I'm a trainer. But, again, just a really terrible situation because, we saw him, Austin. We saw him play in Philadelphia, and during that Sargent era, he was one of the bright spots in a troubling time for the team, and one that, again, made that move to Lille, really looking to make that impact. He just has that great, those tangibles that a lot of players don't have in terms of his skill set and ability to kind of, he's very quick, and he knows how to open up and just the feel of the game. Obviously, there's a few things. He held up the ball maybe too long, and some other instances where he could improve. But I think, man, with these injuries, coming into play, I think he really would have corrected that this year and made a big impact. So I'm really hoping he recovers, and it's a speedy recovery, Austin.
Yeah, and it was tough putting him this low on the list too, because I feel like he's a player over the past, few years where we've really, had him in high regards. And, recently he's kind of been forgotten about just because he's been injured. So, awful. It feels weird having him this low, but I think it's also a testament to some of the players we have coming up here too. We just have a good core of players coming up. So, I don't think that's any slight on Tim Weah. I think Tim Weah is, a good player who's got really good athletic ability and skill too. So, hopefully we can see more of him in 2020 and 2021 because, he's due for some time on the pitch.
That's right, Austin. He's due for a cracker or two, few highlights. That's what we need, especially now. Yeah, right.
What does Pineda say? Banana?
Oh yeah, what was it? The banana kick or something?
Yeah, right. Right. It's Paraguay.
I love it. I love to see it. But again, just wanted to kind of, I guess leave off with Tim Weah here. Get well, Tim. If you're watching this, and again, he really is a special talent, and could be much higher on this list if it weren't for the injury. But again, like you said, Austin, really important point as we're talking about it down the line. Tim Weah, along with some of the other players coming up through the generations, I think it's interesting is it doesn't seem like, and I don't want to jinx us now, so knock on some wood, everyone, but there doesn't seem to be a huge lost generation in terms of the gaps right now. I think we're doing a really good job in terms of our youth setup. So don't want to get too off track, but just wanted to kind of mention that in terms of why, Tim Weah is not as farther down the list.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think with that, we're going to move on to number 6. So number 6 is Uly Llanez. So a player who's really, taken to life in Germany this year. He made the move to Wolfsburg last winter and unfortunately wasn't able to play for them in that spring period. But ever since becoming eligible in the fall, he's really, really taken to life in Germany. And, he scored 11 goals and has 6 assists in a little over 1,200 minutes in the U19 Bundesliga. So, those are good numbers for the amount of time he's really played. And, people have taken notice. Greg Berhalter called him up for the January camp where he was, I believe, one of, 3 players, Pat, that were from outside the U.S. To get called up to that camp. So, definitely a good thing to see. And, in that game, he played very well. He was very skillful and, showed his flair that he has. And, that's what we like about him. He also scored, a goal in that game, converted the penalty. So, Uly's done a great job so far at Wolfsburg. It was rumored that Wolfsburg were going to start their training up again here, I believe this week. But unfortunately, obviously, that's been pushed back. Right? So, there's no training going on at the moment. But it was rumored that Uly was actually going to take part in those training sessions with the first team. So, I think that's good to hear. The one caveat is Wolfsburg are not notorious for playing their youth players. So we're going to have to see, what the future holds for Uly. But, just from the past few years, it's been really hard for youth players to get minutes. So, I think what we are really confident in with Uly is just his ability that we've seen so far. He is such a good dribbler of the ball, just dynamic player overall that, even if his chance with Wolfsburg doesn't come, I think we feel confident in his ability as a soccer player to, find an opportunity elsewhere, whether that's, on loan, just even showing out maybe for their 2 team in minutes when he's there, maybe makes the bench and gets his opportunity for the first team. But, I think Uly's really on a good path at the moment. And I think, he's not made it yet. And I think he's got some work still left to do. But, I think, once he gets that first team experience and makes that first team debut somewhere, I think people are really going to take notice, and he's going to be a player that has a long, successful career, hopefully in Europe.
Yeah, Austin, it's funny. It seems like, and this is great, but on Twitter or anywhere online, it's either Uly goal, Uly assist. So you would always see him, his name really surfaced up here in the last, year and a half or so. And it's great to see his rise, just like you said, his dribbling ability and how he can take players on. And, it appears that he's come from, really, a great support system with his family, really hardworking in terms of, some of the things he focuses on, areas he focuses on in terms of even when he's had some injuries, how he's really worked to, improve his strength in different areas of his game. And I think if anyone's going to do it, Austin, at a tough place to break in at Wolfsburg and overcome the odds, it's definitely Uly Llanez. And there's a reason why he's number 6.
Yeah, that's a good point. He does have good, fight in him. He's a player that was left off the U-17 roster. I know that was something that him and his family was really disappointed in. And just, shown with his vigor and coming back and just becoming more and more of a complete soccer player. He just hasn't really, what's the best way to put it? He hasn't really let expectations define him. He's been a player that has, consistently tried to push himself past the limit that people set on him. So I think for that reason, I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's one of maybe 2 players in the pool, Pat, that has his dynamic ability. I would think maybe Christian Pulisic, and then maybe Tim Weah would be the other 2 that kind of have something similar to what Uly has. So other than those 2, Gio has some of the dribbling ability, but not necessarily the quickness and speed that Uly can take players on at. So yeah, again, for that, he's this high on our list. So let's move on to the top 5, Pat. So who's
right?
Who's number 5?
That's right, number 5. Drum rolls. We have Richy Ledezma over with PSV. So the 19-year-old attacking midfielder, has had a tremendous trajectory upwards with his career so far. So he actually arrived there on the scene. I think it was January 2019. With the U19s, killed it there, and now with young PSV, and what a season he's had, Austin. I think in the 25 appearances, he's had 23 starts, 4 goals, 3 assists. Some decent numbers there. While maybe not as high up on the score sheet or the assists, he's made a great impact. Overall, in terms of the flow of the team and impacting from that midfielder slots, because he's so dynamic that he can play at that 10 or 8, and his I guess it's just overall ability to find the tight spaces and be aware and know where the next pass is going to be and how he orchestrates things and makes it look so easy. I think is a quality or qualities that I as a huge soccer fan really admire. And I think that'd be such a great asset as he continues to develop to move forward to our national team, because we certainly need more of those connecting with, whether it's Christian or, any other of our forwards that emerge out of this list, future forward, besides Josie Altidore, who's already, there. But yeah, just somebody that can really orchestrate and take players on, and again, get on the score sheet here and there, but just make a huge difference on the field in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah. I mean, I agree wholeheartely. I think what makes Richy really exciting is just his shiftiness. He's a player who has very quick feet and is very comfortable in traffic, and someone that can also pick out a good pass too. I think the one knock on him is he's very what is it? I believe right foot centric. I can't remember what foot. Right foot, right? So that's the one knock on him, I guess. But Mesut Ozil is only good with one foot. So hey, if he
hasn't had a horrible career.
No, I don't think so. So Richy is someone who really excites me, and I think he's a midfielder who, like you were saying, Pat, should be in the future playing with Christian Pulisic, Wes McKennie, maybe Tyler Adams, a player who shares similar qualities in the sense of how comfortable they are in possession. So yeah, I'm really excited about Richy.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. And Austin, I think just in terms of, again, a player that as I mentioned before, someone that's on that young team, the PSVs and Ajaxes here. But I think, right before the season abruptly ended, I think next year would be a great target for him to kind of go into camp and training and see how everything goes. And I wouldn't be surprised maybe, he starts a little bit with young PSV, or maybe right away he's already, on the bench with the first team and making some substitute appearances here and there. But I think next year will be really crucial, and maybe he could even exceed my expectations and become a starter there.
Yeah, and he was actually one of 4 players called up to the PSV first team over their winter training period. So he's definitely in that cusp of players that PSV are looking at. It just seems like he still needs to do something to finally break in with them. He made the bench one time earlier in the year, but I think he's right there on the doorstep. I think it's safe to assume. Yeah, he's definitely knocking. I think PSV will let him in soon, though, so they won't leave him out in the cold for too much longer.
Right. So just not too much more on this Richy Ledezma's situation here, and again, just really deserving, I think, to be number 5 here. Yeah,
and I think with that, we'll move on to number 4. So number 4 is another player, like several other players on this list, that we thought was going to be a little bit higher, maybe a little while back, and that would be Josh Sargent. So Josh Sargent's still only 20 years old, just turned 20 in February, and it's been a rough season for him at Werder Bremen, and obviously we've chronicled it on the show all season long. Werder Bremen's had just a horrible season, similar to Schalke's season last year, and I would even say worse than that. They're sitting in the relegation zone at the moment, so
they're lucky. I guess that's one thing they're probably happy about is the pause.
Yeah, them especially. They would be the team that would luck out most if the season's cut short. But it's been tough, and it's been tough for Josh Sargent as well. He's gotten, I guess he scored 3 goals and had 3 assists in a little under 1,000 minutes this season. So, going by that, those aren't horrible numbers. A lot of those were substitute appearances, but he definitely got his fair share of opportunities this year. And it just seemed like whenever he got an opportunity, it didn't work out for him. He was at times lethargic in games this year. Just seemed a little downtrodden and, a little timid, maybe is the right word for it. What we came to expect from Josh Sargent, watching him at the youth level, and even at, the youth level when he made the jump to Germany, scoring goals for the U19 team at Werder Bremen and their 2 team there. He was a player that was ruthless in front of goal, very clinical and very, he wasn't afraid to shoot the ball and go for goal. And it seems like this year he's really just lost that confidence. He hasn't taken many shots. The one shot he took in their, it might've been their most recent game when he scored that goal for Bremen, was a nice shot that, he just has not been taking all season long. he's had moments in the box where he's looked to pass the ball to people, or he's just not been keen to get on the end of runs, or not just call for the ball in situations where a normal striker would want to step up and take a shot. So I think that's been the one really disappointing thing about him this season. And I do think it's just a byproduct of how bad Bremen are playing as a whole this year. And I think, another part of it too is just the position that their coach, Florian Kohfeldt, has put him in. Florian Kohfeldt asks Bremen strikers to track back a lot and defend, and even play out on the wing at times and exchange with some of the wingers in like a 3-forward system. And it's just not Josh's game. He's just not that player. He's a player that likes to, he will combine with players, but he's a player that likes to stay up the field. He's a poacher number 9. He's a player that likes to be in and around the box and finish chances. And it just seems like they're not doing that with Josh. They're not playing him in that role. And I think it's been tough for Josh to really adapt to that different demand of him and request of, how he's on the field. So, with that being said, Pat, I still like his quality, and he's shown it this year that he still has good touch on the ball and, can still create for other people, take balls down in tight spaces, even shooting at times. Like I said, he hasn't really shot much, but that shot he just had for the goal was a nice shot. So he's got all the qualities. It's just kind of a mental roadblock he's hit this season. And, I think for that reason, he's kind of slipped down our list a little bit.
Yeah. And I think what is interesting too about that, and just in terms of, like maybe that spark or that confidence is a little lost right now. And maybe that can kind of happen to young players with all those expectations on them, expecting them to be great. But maybe he just needs this time to kind of recoup, sit back, assess his options and really focus on his game. And then I think everything else will play out, and work in his favor in the long run. But just in the times right now, because it can seem kind of difficult in terms of maybe, not as many shots as he'd like. Maybe there's other players in the system getting more looks and he's kind of setting them up. Or again, I don't want to go too much into the coach's tactics because I'm not, a tactician or anything. But yeah, again, like you said, it just seems like, Florian isn't putting him in the best situations, as well as the struggle that they've had, Werder Bremen as a whole. Just probably not a great atmosphere. And not a great, it's, things aren't working. Players are getting frustrated, maybe not trusting each other, passing the ball around properly, or, maybe holding it on if, I see this person here, here and there. So, hopefully the situations kind of pan out for him, because like you said, Austin, he has all the qualities to, be that striker, be that one to, lead our program.
Yeah, he definitely has the quality. It's just that like foggy place he's in at the moment. He just doesn't seem confident. He doesn't seem engaged, and it's almost like he's really kind of hating life at Bremen at the moment. Which I agree. Yeah, I mean it makes sense. The team's not doing well at all, but he's got to just realize he still has a great opportunity. He's playing in the Bundesliga. It doesn't matter, I guess, what the team does in that sense. Maybe he's got to be a little bit more selfish, when he's on the pitch, play maybe more angry or something like that. Because he's just has the quality. Yeah, right. So, I mean, it's just been a little disappointing. I think it's still safe to say he's our best, striker prospect at the moment. He's really the only striker. I feel weird saying that, but I think he's still really the only striker that we have playing at a level like, the Bundesliga, and even, on that course at the moment. I know we have some
right now. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they're all, if we had someone like that, they should be on this list. But I mean, there's not many other striker options at the moment. So I think he's still got to realize that he's super important for the USMNT, and I think that should motivate him. And I think he's just got to realize he's still a young player and is in a great opportunity, a great position, and still has a long future ahead of him. So kind of maybe a sour take on where Josh is on our list, but, I think he's still very high on our list because he's got the talent and he's got the potential. So I guess with that, we'll move on to our top three, Pat. And who's coming in at number three?
Yeah, number three, much needed in terms of defensive positions for the U.S. here, and that is Chris Richards, a 20-year-old center back. He's also played some right back too for Bayern, in Bayern too, in the 3 league in the Bundesliga. So again, has been a really consistent starter there, 22 appearances, and has really showed up for the club. And even from the U19s, he's impressed and moved on very rapidly, as well as his time with the U.S. youth in the World Cup. But I think Chris Richards overall is just in an interesting spot because he is the qualities that he has, the athleticism, I think I mentioned earlier off camera, just the size he has and being able to his jumping ability to win ball aerial duels, like similar to Miazga in the air, scoring some good goals too. I think in the 3 Bundesliga there too, Chris has. And I just think he is at a point where Bayern's very, very difficult to break into. Austin, correct me if I'm wrong if you think there's areas where maybe he could find himself in with the first team, but I would really love him to see whether it's loan or move up a level from the 3 Bundesliga, but to get consistent first team minutes. Maybe he has to look elsewhere, but that's certainly a player that I think at this point, certainly next season, the season after, definitely should be playing, not for a reserve team. Yeah,
and he's had, I would say, really, it's been an interesting year for Chris Richards. So I guess to go into a little bit, he had that great performance at the U-20 World Cup, was really one of the, I would say, the strongest performers from our team coming away from that tournament. And, going into this season with Bayern, their 2 team got promoted to the 3 Liga, which is, out of all the Bundesliga clubs, that's the highest league that any of the 2 teams play in. So, that was a big thing for Bayern. And I think it was good for them to keep Chris Richards at the club this year. And, it looked like at the start of the season, they played him at right back. So basically they started their 33-year-old captain at center back, and then also their other really exciting center back prospect, Lucas Mai, at center back next to him, and then moved Chris out to the right back position. So I guess when you saw that at the beginning of the season, you were kind of concerned that it seemed like maybe Bayern was prioritizing Lucas Mai over Chris Richards. And I do think that's, what happened. And, I think their thought process in putting Chris out at the right back position is, look, if Chris is going to rise to the level that, people think he's capable of rising to, and even maybe them internally thought he's capable of rising to, then, we're going to throw him into a different situation than he's ever faced before, and he'll succeed. And that's kind of what happened. He played well all fall. Bayern too, I believe, are mid-table towards the top of the table in the 3 Liga right now. So yeah, he did really well in the fall. And then come, I think it was in January, in their very first game in 2020, they moved him to center back. And I think, they played him over that 33-year-old captain. So I think it was, kind of a trial period for Chris in the fall, where Bayern were, I think Bayern have their own priorities, and I understand why they probably prioritize Lucas Mai, who's a, German-born player. I believe he's a few days younger than Chris Richards.
Right.
So, he might be a more enticing prospect for them to grow. But I think, there was a period of time where I think they wanted to test Chris Richards. And I think with him starting now, all spring, he started every game for Bayern too at that center back position. I think that shows that he rose to the challenge and surpassed the challenge and met it. So I think that's great. And I think, with that being said, I think he's done everything Bayern have asked for him at Bayern 2 this season. And I think that's really going to set him up for, like you said, Pat, hopefully a loan move this coming season. I think he's definitely Bundesliga 2 ready. I think he could go to a 2 Bundesliga team right at the moment and start for, most of those teams. I just think he's that good of a prospect. I think, he's got all the qualities you look for in a good center back. He's big, strong, quick, when he needs to be, very smooth with ball in possession. Makes good decisions. Like you said, dominant in the air too. He scored several goals this season for them in the 3 Liga. So with that being said, I'm just really excited about Chris Richards' rise at Bayern, and I think he's just a really good all-around center back prospect, and one that deserves to be mentioned maybe with some of the names that we're talking about in our core of players like Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, heck, Gio Reyna. We got some other people on this list too. So I think he should be right up there on that list because he is such a good prospect.
Yeah. Yeah, you explained it. You did perfectly awesome. I don't even know how to follow that up, but no, yeah, I mean, I just think it'd be fantastic to see Chris. Whether it's continuing with Bayern and get in there with the first team, or just again, ideally get a loan move or move to even a 2 Bundesliga team, because maybe that path isn't directly completely vertical, I should say. Maybe it's got a little bit of sideways angles here and there, but he has all those skill sets that you've mentioned. And which is really interesting that you mentioned too is that I think you said smooth on the ball, and then also I think we also touched on it, and kind of that brings me back to is just being very composed and under pressure, and being able to adapt to those situations and play out of the back, because our center backs currently have a hard time with that, and a prospect this high level and number 3, and someone that could really, like you said, be grouped together with that Pulisic crew and McKennie and Adams and all them, really could be that first line of defense all the way up through those star players to complete a really good core team in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. So I think that's all for Chris Richards. Really excited about his future. So now down to the final 2, Pat. So I feel like a lot of people know who these 2 players are, but what order we put them in is a different story, I guess. So number 2, drum roll please. Number 2 is Sergino Dest. So Sergino really, jumped onto the scene this summer with Ajax and really got the opportunity to tour with them in preseason training. And then, some injuries happened. Mazraoui went down for Ajax, and Sergino was kind of called into action in a few Champions League qualifiers, I believe, and then also some Eredivisie games, and really impressed in his time on the field. So, right from there, he kind of, catapulted up their charts, and then, got called up for the USMNT, ended up making his decision in November to commit to us full time. So, obviously very excited about that. And Pat, it's just been a great year for Sergino. He's played 2,700 minutes so far this season total. So, from a player that was at the U-20 World Cup and didn't, feature for Ajax before, I think it was August was the first time he featured for their first team. That's really impressive. And, he also scored 2 goals this season, had 6 assists. And I don't believe Ajax are in first place at the moment in the Eredivisie, but, he's really been a player that's really helped them this season. And, stepped in, like I said, when players were injured, and really stepped up and kind of taken the right back position and made it his own there, Ajax. What really separates Sergino Dest is his great ability going forward in attack. He's really skillful with the ball at his feet, loves to play in possession. Still a quick player too, quick and fast player. Might not be really known for that speed, but can definitely, get up and down the wings. And, it's really just that dribbling ability and close control of the ball for a fullback that's so unique for him, and really sets him apart. Yeah, it's really, really exciting. So, the one thing he will need to work on a little bit is his defensive positioning and just his ability to track back better, and just be more keen to some of his defensive assignments. I know we talked about in I think it was our last episode, where he got in a little fight with Dusan Tadic over some positional awareness and things of that nature. So, yeah, he's still a young player. I believe he's still in the 19. I don't think he turned 20 yet. But yeah, he's just, the world's ahead of him. And I think he's just going to continue to get better and better. He seems to be a player that really wants to challenge himself and stay in, a team that plays in the Champions League regularly. It seems like Champions League is something that, he really wants to continue to play in and kind of prides himself on. And has set that goal for him. So I'm excited about that. I think, more players who want to challenge themselves at the absolute highest level in our team is better. And I'm just really excited about what the future holds for Sergino.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities, Austin, with his future and rumors that he's being linked with here and there. And so, I think he's just at such a good situation, such a good place. It's almost maybe selfish of me to think, I don't want any change. Just continue how it is and progress, with Ajax here. But I mean, the sky is the limit for this player. I think, like you said, just tuning up on defensive assignments and being aware sometimes maybe some players get in behind him, but he can recover pretty quickly. But just kind of adapting to that side of the game. And then, like you mentioned too, just the modern, outside backs, they seem to have that flair and they almost play like midfielders now. They're all the way up the pitch, with, delivering in great crosses, combining on top of the box in the 18 there. So it's just kind of incredible, to see how the game's evolved. And also Sergino seems to be a perfect player for this era right now.
Yeah, he really is a perfect player for this new style of game, and where the fullbacks are just so much more a part of attacks going forward. And I think that's what makes him so attractive to some of these teams that are rumored to be, looking at him, like Bayern. It's a big club. So it's exciting. I don't think we've ever had a fullback with this much offensive ability and quality, and the dude's only, a teenager at the moment. So, he's just going to continue to keep honing that skill. And, like we said, hopefully the defensive ability improves as well. And if he can do that, I think, he could honestly be a player for a team like Bayern, a consistent starter every day. So it's the fact that we have someone with that potential in our team. It's really exciting. Yeah. So, do you have anything else to add, Pat? I mean,
just kind of echoing, it's just unreal to think about, like you said, that we have a player this caliber. So,
and his rise too. It's just been, he's improved year by year. Played with the U17s. I think it was like 3 years ago now. Played with the U19s, I guess, at Ajax. Then played with young Ajax the year before. Did really well, and then just took his opportunity when it came. So, just a testament to his hard work.
And that's the key to all the odds, taking those opportunities and, really, making a name for yourself when you have those chances.
That's right. Yeah.
But Austin, I think, it's really exciting. I think we've finally arrived here at the final countdown.
Number one,
almost like my quick kicks voice.
Yeah, right.
And now number one here on the list. That is Gio Reyna. Again, exciting, Austin. Really exciting and great prospect to have. Number one, 17-year-old attacking midfielder from Borussia Dortmund, son of Claudio Reyna, another professional and great U.S. player in the past. So just to go over his season so far there. With the U19s, he actually had 8 goals and 15 appearances. Quick rise. He's almost had a Pulisic type of rise, Austin.
Yeah.
Which is really, really exciting. He's actually broken some records of being the youngest players in certain tournaments, as I'll get to here. But just in terms of moving up to the first team, Austin, I think his debut was against Augsburg. And I think it was January. I think it was January this year. Yeah, January 18th. And as a substitute came on, and then not too long after that, he was involved in 2 Champions League games, a DFB Pokal game, a beautiful goal he scored in that game. I think along with Emre Can too. I think there were some wonder goals going on. Again, I'm not sure if that was maybe the right game, but nonetheless, Gio's goal was fantastic. Along with the Champions League performance against PSG, where came on, made a huge impact. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. And he had a great assist, and became the youngest player, to feature in the Champions League, along with the youngest player, I think, to score a goal in the DFB Pokal. So breaking all those records, and it's no doubt why he's been breaking these and rising so fast, Austin. So I don't know if you want to kind of take this spin on some of the great traits and attributes that he has to his game.
Yeah, he's another player where the word smooth defines his game. He's just so smooth with the ball at his feet, and can kind of dribble out of any situation. Again, we saw that against PSG. Excuse me, that's
all right.
PSV.
Some of the PSVs.
Yeah, we saw him get out of a really tight situation there, he's a different type of player. And I think what really is impressive about him is just his size as well. He's, I believe, 6 foot, 6'1", and he's a 17-year-old right now, so he's just going to continue to fill out. And he really has a body frame similar to, you hate to make these bold comparisons and comparisons that probably won't ever materialize, but he has the same body size of like a Cristiano Ronaldo, even like a Kaká. I'm trying to think of some more of those taller type players. I think I made a comparison, even a player that doesn't have a huge body, but he plays somewhat similar to like Julian Draxler. I think I made that comparison in the back. And I just, he's so good with the ball at his feet, and he's still so young, and it's just really exciting.
It is unreal, Austin. I think another point too, because you hit on everything there, is his swagger and his style, I should say. Just how he looks so confident going forward, being so young, and having all that skill set, and really just kind of maybe demanding the ball, asking for the ball.
He does a lot of that.
He does a lot, and that's hard to do as a young player, especially with such a top team with top caliber players. So it's definitely nice to see him and someone that could really be that vocal leader, down the road here, maybe in the not so distant future, I should say.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess a good conversation to have here is, eventually when he gets called up to the USMNT, which we gotta believe would be maybe in the fall if we go straight to World Cup qualifiers, which would be a little daunting. Where do you think his best position would be in a USMNT team with all the other players we have? Christian Pulisic, Wes McKennie, Tyler Adams, Uly Llanez, Tim Weah, whoever you want. Where do you think he would fit in with a team like that?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Austin. Man, I would say, I don't think he's like he could kind of fit different molds, I think, and it depends, I guess, what what system they're going with. But he almost kind of could push up farther than not necessarily like a Roldan type player, but maybe someone farther up the pitch. I don't know if I could pinpoint a position, but want to get your take on that too. Yeah,
do you think he would be a more central player, like a cam, or do you think he'd be more of a winger?
Yeah, I think, and maybe if you're varying, I would probably put him maybe initially in the midfield or in the cam position, and maybe that's just because some of the highlights that I've seen and some of the skill sets that he has and possesses in tight spaces, and be able to kind of really, again, kind of orchestrate and create things there. Just because we do have some flair and stuff on the wings, which again he could still do, but maybe I'm just. I think he'd fit in pretty well in the central part of the pitch there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really conflicted because he's so young, and especially in a game where it's potentially a World Cup qualifier come up in the fall. It would be tough to really start someone in the center of the pitch and be kind of the catalyst going forward. But I do think in the future, he's got all those abilities of a central midfielder, in the sense that like he can hold the ball up so well. He's very good in tight spaces. He's good at passing the ball, first time. He's good at even finding players, making runs upfield and has that range of passing as well. It's tough to really put a player like that out on the wing. But I don't know. I think right now, maybe in the current setup we have, with the players that we have, at the moment, I think if we played him on the wing, maybe in a capacity of like a first off the bench, like a 12th man or a sixth man, even maybe starting him, I think, Jordan Morris would be the one player we'd probably have to start over him at the moment, just because he's in good form, or at least was before this hiatus. And just, we'll see what other midfielders we have going on. But I think maybe to get his feet wet with the men's national team, maybe we play him on the wing, but then look to move him into the midfield when he gets more when he gets older and gets more mature. His body gets bigger, so he can hold off people better and really kind of utilize that skill set he has. Because like you said, Pat, I think he's good at all the things that would make a good cam, or even like a further forward center mid, like a number 8. Kind of push higher up the field.
And let me rephrase, I guess, maybe put him in the central part of the pitch against a St. Vincent's and the Grenadines type of for now. But I think that's actually a good point. I'm shifting a little bit more onto your side too, is just kind of implementing him, kind of dipping his toes in the water there in the wings, and then if he really succeeds and thrives there, move him in centrally.
The one thing he could potentially have, and I mean, we've only seen it a little bit now, even at the youth level, we haven't really seen too much of it, but that shot he had against Bremen was a very nice shot from distance. So if he can add that to his game, like I said, I haven't really seen too much of that from him. He is a very, I hate to say this word, but very greedy player, or at least was at the youth level, which, he was always playing, it seemed like, well above his, I guess playing down to his age group, because he was such a good player. But, I think if he can add some of that shooting and can really develop a shot from distance, then playing him in the midfield would really be, I think, a really powerful asset, because he could just, spray balls from the midfield in on goal, and then hopefully Josh Sargent or, Christian Pulisic rushing in, Uly Llanez, Jordan Morris, whoever it is, could put some of those balls in the back of the net.
Absolutely. Sounds like a dream scenario there.
Yeah, 2026.
Much more. 2026, Austin. And I think it's going to be a huge, a crucial part, as in why he's number 1 on the list.
That's right. So, Pat, I don't think I have anything else to really add to this list. I think, I'm sure we'll have a lot of critiques, which, that's what this list is about. In this coronavirus hiatus, we're wanting to hear everyone's opinion on where we stand currently in the fold with our national team pool, and we try to take a look at it from our perspective, our perspective. That's right,
and just to, again, as a soccer community, gather some opinions. Maybe there's some players on the fringe that weren't on this list that maybe you could throw in there, and just kind of gather everyone and gather all opinions and insights there, and really come together, because again, in this crazy time that we're going through, I think down the road we really do have all these players and in different scenarios and different skills that they all bring to the table, and I think that's something to really look forward to in time of despair.
So I guess with that being said, we should do our shameless plug. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel down below. And what else should we do?
Of course, guys. You got to make sure you check out our Instagram account. Always putting up great content there, as well as Twitter. So social media, we're continuing to update you and provide you some content while we can, because there's not too much going on in terms of weekly games at all.
It's brutal. But hey, all this trying time, this cauldron that we're in right now, this crucible, that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
The crucible we're in right now is leading to that one shining moment. March Madness reference. One day we will win the World Cup.